Teresa, would you please call the roll? Thank you.
Ron. Joycelyn. Gordon.
Here.
John.
Here.
Michael.
Here.
Lori. Jim. Here. Brent.
Here.
Noel.
Here.
Rita. Here. Susan.
Present.
Michelle.
Here.
Lori. She's maybe on mute.
Lori, you're muted if you're trying to talk.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Next matter is, approval of the agenda. I request a point of personal privilege. We have an item 4.2 for recognitions. I'd like to have us move it up to 2.3 so we can address this matter, I believe, more efficiently and give it the attention it deserves. So with that, I'm going to entertain a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Second, then moved to second that we approve our agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Or abstaining? Okay, the agenda's been approved. And our next matter is awards and recognitions, and there are three people very much deserving recognition. So I believe, Lori, are you getting this up? Lori? Is Lori still with us?
Lori, we can't hear you. You're unmuted though.
You can come on up.
Doggone it. I don't know.
Here you go.
I don't know. I can hear you. I'd like to introduce Chris Brown, who is a representative and who was going to make a presentation.
Not exactly sure.
That microphone?
Is there, could Stephen come up? And I hope you can hear me. I'm not going to be able to get right in front of that microphone. Should we be looking this way, I guess? Okay, is that on?
Yes.
All right, well, let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Chris Brown. I'm a state representative, District 16 in the Missouri House of Representatives. District 16 is up north. My district lies directly between Liberty, running west, straddling 152 highway over to Platte County. And one of the cool things, in my opinion, that I get to do as part of this job is I get to recognize outstanding individuals in the community that have done good work. So I get to present these resolutions and proclamations to folks like Mr. Stephen Potter. And I think if you looked up a resolution in an encyclopedia or a dictionary or something like that, it would say that it is an expression of a legislative body. So this is a House of Representatives that is recognizing someone for good work in terms of their career, outstanding achievement, whatever the case may be. So anyway, as I read this, Stephen, I have to tell you, and I don't know Stephen personally, this is the first time I've met him tonight, but my goodness, he has done some good work for the Mid-Continent Library over the last 34 years. I mean, this is an exceedingly impressive list of accomplishments that he has done. So if you don't mind, if I could just have about 2, maybe 3 minutes, I'm just going to read what is on this proclamation, make the presentation, and then I'll let you get on with your meeting. All right, so it says, whereas it is with special pleasure that the members of the Missouri House of Representatives pause to recognize Stephen Potter, who is retiring from the Mid-Continent Public Library in Independence, Missouri on June 30th, 2022. Congratulations. After 34 years of exceptional service and dedication, Stephen has successfully completed the many duties and tasks placed before him throughout his impressive tenure as library director and CEO, during which time he ushered in many significant milestones and achievements for the library, including the launch of the MyMCPL.org website, the addition of downloadable ebooks, and the inception of the Story Center. During Mr. Potter's long and illustrious career, the Mid-Continent Public Library won the IMLS National Medal for Museum and Library Service Award, presented by First Lady Michelle Obama in 2014. Stephen has compiled an enviable list of service to such important organizations as the Clay County Economic Development Corporation, the Independence Chamber of Commerce, Truman Heartland Community Foundation, Amigos Library Services, Every Library Institute, Mid-American Library Alliance, Missouri Public Library Directors, Missouri Library Association, Public Library Association, and the American Library Association and Rotary Club of Independence. Stephen looks forward to his retirement so that he can spend more quality time with his devoted wife, Leanne. Now, be it resolved, the members of the Missouri House of Representatives of the 101st General Assembly join in expressing our utmost appreciation to Stephen Potter for his many years of unparalleled service to the Mid-Continent Public Library and in wishing him the long, enjoyable retirement he so richly deserves. Stephen, congratulations and thank you for your service.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate you coming and participating. Thank you again. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, I was just saying thank you. And Steve, I just appreciate you, and I wanted to make sure that we recognized your contribution to the Mid-Continent Public Library.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Representative Brown and Laurie. Our next matter, I believe, will be addressed by Deanna.
Diane.
I'm sorry.
All right, good evening, trustees. I'm Diana Ryder. I'm the fundraising director for the library, and I have the pleasure of introducing a guest here at the meeting this evening, Mr. Eduardo Garcia. Mr. Garcia, would you like to come up? Mr. Garcia is the owner of the La Fuente restaurants within our library district. He has many, many restaurants within our district. And Mr. Garcia had worked with John Laney and Brent Schondelmeyer and had made a generous donation to our Would Need campaign. And he is here to deliver a $50,000 check to the library for our Story Center endowment. And so Brent and John, if you would come up, I would love to get a photo of Mr. Garcia presenting the check. Mr. Garcia, would you like to say anything? He said, I don't want to really talk. So.
Just here representing La Fuente, and I'm really happy to help with this donation. So, thank you.
Thank you. You're great. All right.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, just me.
Oh, okay.
And our third recognition is Phil Grumbaugh. Phil has served the library as legal counsel for 34 years. And I've had the absolute privilege of being on the board and seeing the very wise counsel that Steve has offered. And Phil is going into semi-retirement shortly, and we wish him all the very, very best. And we have an expression of our appreciation for you, Phil.
Hard to believe it's 34 years, and I'm only 40 years old.
Okay, the next matter on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. This is just a procedure the board exercises to basically save time. There are a lot of matters that are kind of routine and perfunctory, like approving previous minutes and expense reports. And all we're doing in this process of having a consent agenda is, instead of having you suffer through listening to the previous minutes, we're going to have a motion to have them approved. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Thank you. Second, it's been moved and seconded. We approve our consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Or abstaining? Thank you, it's passed. Our next matter is the visitors' comments. Now, for those of you who have been at the previous meetings or maybe saw the meetings on YouTube, this is typically a matter that's covered at the end of the meeting, but to save time and give you a chance to, offer what you wish. This has been moved from the traditional time towards the end of the meeting to right now. We have 5 persons who have expressed interest in sharing the comments. My thought is that if anybody is expressing their thoughts for the first time at a board meeting, I'd like you to be first. And those who've been previous speakers, we certainly will have you join us. Now, our bylaws that we're stuck with impose an aggregate half-hour time period. If we don't have time to have everybody share what they want to share, I would meeting will adjourn and meet with you then too. But as of right now, during the meeting, we do have the half-hour limitation. So we have Mark Honer, Warrington Williams, Jim Bacon, Lori Green, and Henry Rankin. So whoever is here for the first time, please feel free to start off.
My name is Lori Green. I am a resident of Liberty, and I have been a lifetime user of libraries. I grew up in Wisconsin, and one of my favorite memories growing up is going to the public library in Madison with my mom once a month, filling up with books and coming home, and then taking them back the next month and doing it all over again. It was a very special time in my life. When I moved to Missouri, excuse me, in 1992, Mid-Continent became my new favorite home. I've lived in Independence, I've lived in Blue Springs, and I live in Liberty now. I also was an employee at North Oak Public Library. And I'm here also, I am a school librarian. In Liberty, I was at Manor Hill Elementary until I retired. And then now I am working at a charter school called Frontier School of Innovation. And the one thing that I would like you to know, as a teacher and a librarian, I use the Mid-Continent Public Resources all the time. And now that I'm in Kansas City, I'm technically supposed to use more Kansas City resources, but Mid-Continent's resources are above and beyond what I can get from the Kansas City Public Library. And so since I'm a resident of the Mid-Continent library system, I feel free to use those resources. As a librarian, I have taught kids how to do research using the databases that are provided through Mid-Continent. I've taught students how to take notes. I've taught students how to find ebooks that they can put on their devices to be able to read. And it just thrills me how much Mid-Continent has supported the school districts. We worked hand in hand with the Liberty librarians to do our summer programming. And we encouraged our students to participate in their program. And so I'm fearful of any kinds of budget alterations that are in front of us. So one of the things that I found out when I went to work at North Oak is that my perception of libraries was really naive. I mean, I grew up in a family that had enough money to live comfortably. I had computers as an adult, and when I started working at North Oak, the population that we saw there were a lot of people that didn't have printers that would come in and print off their airplane tickets or their concert tickets. People that didn't have the internet at home to be, or even computers at home to be able to fill out job applications. And I can't tell you how many times I would sit next to somebody to help them walk through the steps of being able to do a job application. So I did not realize how many people we were impacting in our community, besides the moms that I knew that would go to the library to get books for their kids, that used the programming that was available. It was so much more than what I had ever realized up until then. Kids that didn't have a place to go after school because mom and dad weren't there felt safe at the libraries, using resources or just sitting in the corner and reading. We did have homeless people that would come in. They were never any problem. They would just find a place that was cool in the summertime and warm in the wintertime to be able to carry on with life. It's really hard to apply for a job when you don't have an address. And so, they were able to come in and fill out, applications for aid or whatever else that they needed. So that kind of brings me to why I am here today. As an educator, I hear a lot about politics creeping into our schools, dictating our curriculum, censoring our books, and now the public library seems to be under the same stresses. I have watched the last several board meetings online, and I understand that a small group of trustees, mainly from Platte and Clay County, are bringing some of those politics into our schools. Several have written letters to their local papers to complain about books or displays in different libraries, and they are threatening to not pass the proposed budget that staff members have so dutifully worked on. These staff members that were hired by you ultimately. When I looked through the board policies, I noticed that all members of the Board of Trustees have memberships paid by Mid-Continent Public Library to the American Library Association and other organizations, which is on page 10 of your board policies. Your collection policy reflects standards approved by these organizations. You have these standards also in the appendices of the board policies. Our Board of Trustees should be airing their concerns to staff at Mid-Continent as well as to the board instead of the newspapers. If there are Board of Trustee members who do not wish to follow the ALA policies, then they should be removed from the board and others should fulfill their positions. Finally, I would urge our Board of Trustees to pass the budget that was given to you by these experts. I was very disappointed to see that those asking for changes in the budget were not there in person to hear community concerns at the open hearings that have been recent. Gordon Cook, I think your alternative budget has holes in it. And you stated at the last meeting that you participated in virtually, that the board can pass the budget and later amend it as needed. So my question is, my plea is to pass the budget that was delivered to you. And if you see issues, then make those amendments later. Allow the libraries to move forward so staff members, library branches, ordering of materials, maintaining our beautiful libraries can move forward. And to those school board members, or to those board trustee members who do not have the same beliefs as ALA, please resign so that others that are forward thinking can take your place. You have already pushed out an excellent director. Do not destroy what is the pride and joy of many of us in this community, the Mid-Continent Public Library Service. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Our next presenter.
Good afternoon, trustees and staff people. Mark Cover of Platte County. I have to tell you, I've always been very passionate in supporting libraries and utilizing libraries, particularly our MCPL system. It's amazing to me that here in the heart of the nation, we have one of the largest library systems in the nation, as well as an award-winning library system. And I don't want to see it go under. I don't want to see it roll back the successes that it's had and the customers that it serves. So I have to tell you that I'm passionate about this. I'm a licensed mental health therapist, and I see the library as benefiting our greater community in many, many ways. Many ways. I'm originally from Detroit. One of my earliest memories is getting on the bookmobile outside of Verter Elementary in Detroit. We didn't have libraries close to us. And my parents, who both were first-generation Americans and their community, they, in a lot of ways, depended upon the library. Libraries have always been used to help educate people, whether it's to support the educational system or to be self-educated. I have to say that my oldest son his first job was with the Blue Springs North Library. Remember him dressing up at my prompting in a suit coat to get his first job. I remember back in Detroit reading the books of Robert Heinlein, a Missouri native. And I have to tell you that I didn't know anything about Missouri except through the eyes of Robert Heinlein. I've been to New York many times, well, not many times, but definite times. And I remember visiting the library and seeing the lines outside the New York Public Library and just being amazed by that. So I support the libraries. I've seen up north homeless people, I believe they were houseless, using the libraries. I've seen all sorts of people using the libraries. Up north, we're becoming much more diverse as a population. And I see all sorts of people using the libraries. And that trend will only continue as those counties up north are some of the fastest, if not the fastest growing library counties in our metro. I think our economic situation up north is really pretty good. We're growing. We have a new airport or a rehabbed airport. We have a solar farm. We have Facebook or Meta data center going up there. We have an FBI building going up there. We are growing up north, and we're growing in diversity. I have to tell you that I take the library's mission to heart. It's written clearly. The mission is to enrich our citizens and communities through expanding, not pulling back, but expanding access to innovation, information, ideas, and inspiration. Now the MCPL budget process, and indeed the budget, is being attacked. Not the staff-generated budget, but the process. I looked in the board policies as to how members are not to use, the trustees can use members' expertise, but a budget should not come from one board member's expertise solely. That's in policy. I'm asking that the board show integrity. Do what's right, not what's easy. Do what's right. I believe that the financial situation for this organization is healthy. I have here, and I think many of you, it's hard to see, but this is from the Government Finance Officers Association. It's a certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting. I'm sure you're all aware of this. And I'm sure you're aware that this is not a one-time award given to this library. This is the face sheet from Cochran, Hedvig and Company, the independent auditors for this library. I'm not hearing them or reading that they're saying that the library is going down the drain. So I'm asking you to do the right thing, not the easy thing. Libraries are being attacked throughout this nation. I read yesterday that a library up by Cedar Rapids is under attack. And when libraries are attacked, schools are attacked, governmental policies are attacked, democracy is attacked. So if you want to look at this that way, or if you want to look at the basic economics, our economics stand probably better than a lot of library systems. Steve Potter is leaving the library in a healthy state. His staff has supported him and generated a budget that should be adopted. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Our next presenter. It's up to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Oldebecken. I live on 76th Terrace in Gladstone. It's Clay County's 200th anniversary. I'm hired as an early Clay Countyan, in particular a gentleman by the name of William Boydston. It's my pleasure to be a lobbyist, part-time lobbyist for industry groups. I remember Newt Gingrich and his contract with America. Remember that? That was in the 90s. I was thinking about that today, having to do with contracts, commitments that we have. And in one sense, we are all alike because we are all citizens. We all have a commitment, responsibility. One thing that makes me think has to do with oaths of office. Did you know that that was the first act passed by the United States Senate? Was a requirement for there to be an oath taken and subscribed to do what? To obey the laws, to support the Constitution. And through the years, there were a few changes based on the needs before and after the Civil War, but it's still there. Also, there's an oath requirement in our Missouri Constitution and our Missouri statutes. I wonder if it's possible to obey something and defend something like our Constitution if we've never read it. Or maybe we read it, but it was in college. And I wonder how many here in this room, not just there, all of us have read the Constitution. I think we all want to be defenders of the Constitution. Guess how long it takes to read it? Under an hour. I think it's worth it to read it regularly. In particular, to be able to articulate some of the key points, in particular, the First Amendment. Do you recall when Associate Justice Barrett in her confirmation hearings could not answer the question posed by someone from her own party if she could name the 5 protections of the First Amendment? There are 5. I think a lot of us are using all 5 as we are here. They can be described by 5 words. But that's just an example. I hope if we have a conversation someday, we can talk about the 5 protections of the First Amendment. I will probably ask. But there are other, when we think about the duties that a board of trustees has of such a huge operation, and in essence, sort of like the cradle of democracy, a library, freedom of information, freedom of the press. Well, there's a lot of people that it takes to run this library. I have this photograph for a library system. There's a lot of people here. You know, they have to follow the rules of this library, the bylaws, or anything under the bylaws, anything under governance. And I wonder how they feel when they have to fight a governance body or individuals in a governance body, not all of them, where there's a difference between what the law says and what they're trying to accomplish, or policies. I bring this up because I spent 12 hours before I came here reading governance documents. I read or reviewed the library trustee manual, board policies, and the sunshine law where applicable here. I also reviewed extensively minutes, videos, correspondence, and I got those from the custodian of records. One of the cheats that we can use when we're trying to get public records is ask what the star already asked for. Usually you get it real fast and won't be a charge. So it was helpful because I was able to read public records, including correspondence. And I bring up these matters because they are some of the things of controversy are covered in your governing documents. I'll just take a moment to describe them because they're important. These are things that you have the responsibility of knowing, just like the staff. Duties of committees, governance style, committee authorities and responsibility, interfacing with the professionals on the staff, collection development, freedom to read statement, diversity, and recruitment is covered in the board policy. The Missouri Public Library Trustee Manual, I want to go right to page 25 and 15. It covers intellectual freedom and censorship. I don't think there's a lot to discuss. It's here on who does what. The Library Bill of Rights. And I encourage people that are trying to make their petition to this body to also have that burden. Let's educate ourselves. It's readily, all this is readily available. I have one more thing to say regarding matters of race and diversity. That is covered in these documents. But I have a concern that transcends documents. It's people. I could really use a glass of water. But it has, you know, I don't know what y'all did over the weekend. I was glad to see an article that talked about an exhibit at the World War I Museum, Blacks and Citizenship in the Jim Crow Era. Did anyone make it? Well, it's been 400 years since we've had legalized owning of humans as property. And we still have so many struggles with race. And to me, I was grieved. Some of the things that I read in correspondence and minutes regarding positions that I think might have some political, I'm nonpartisan, but I think they may have some partisan root, or I don't know what they are, but they concern me. We should be further along as a country in these matters. What's so hard about one self-evident truth? Of all the self-evident truths, there's always one, only one in the Declaration. We're all created equal. In the Bible, we're a Christian nation. At least most people say they are. I choose not to reveal my personal faith, if I have any. I think that's my right. But I do know the Christian Bible says things like the second greatest commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. And I definitely, but let me just get back to the library. I don't think it's our responsibility around this table, around this side. It's the library professionals that are to choose what should be available. And I do not believe in censorship. And I don't like it used as a political hockey puck. I have one more thing. Something I don't understand. It's a public record. And I'm sure I'm out of time, so I'll just pass around copies for you. But I don't understand the dates with the appointment of one of the trustees. What you have there is a resolution. I encourage you all to take a copy. It's a resolution from a county to appoint an individual, and the dates make no sense to me. I got that through a public records request. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, and who chooses to be next? We have two more. I believe we have Warrington Williams and Henry Rankin. If you are here, you're invited to share your thoughts. Okay, last call. If Warrington Williams or Henry Rankin are here, you're certainly invited to share your thoughts for the Board of Trustees. Yeah, okay. Okay, back to our agenda, financial reports.
Okay, thank you. On page. Okay, hi, page one. Page one shows the total amount of tax revenue we have received by the end of May. The total amount is $62.2 million, which is about $2 million more than last year's. Also, during the month, we received a second half payment of A&E tax and a state aid to public libraries. For the whole year, we received a total amount of $784,000 for those two revenues. The total amount of operating revenue is about $57 million. Page two shows the operating expenditures for payroll and benefits. It's a little over $28 million, 85% of the budget. Library materials is about $9.8 million, 81% of the budget. The library operations account is about close to $7.6 million, 71% of the budget. Next page, page 3 is the debt service fund. Right in the middle of the statement, it shows the ending balance of the construction fund, which is about $3.5 million. We have requested to have that amount to be dispersed to the library, and a certificate of completion will be signed to close this construction fund account with BOK Financial. Next page is the capital project fund. Right now, we have two active projects. The top one, with historical home, we have spent close to $100,000. And at the bottom is the capital improvement plan. So far this year, we spent $20,257,000. Next page is the grants and the gifts fund. So far, we received governmental grants for about $140,000, and the private grants is about $135,748. And the library lovers membership is close to $11,000. Also, we spent about $267,780 for programs, and close to $11,000 for the library lovers activities. The cash balance is $436,692. Next page is the health insurance fund. The total amount of contributions from the employer and employees is about $3.3 million. The fixed costs and fees is a little over $1 million. And the medical claims is over $2.4 million. The cash on hand is close to $1.7 million. And the fund balance is $1.4 million. And I just recalculated the minimum and the maximum fund balance required by the fund policy. The minimum is $1,082,092. The maximum amount is $1.6 million, based on the 6 months in 2022. Also, next page, that's something new. We have an updated guiding principles and procedures. For anything over $3,000, we will take to the library board for review and will require an approval if budget amendment is necessary. Right now, we have 2 non-budget items over $3,000. The first one is the tests for fire sprinkler systems. The second one is the circuit breaker replacement. Because those 2 items can be covered by the savings from budgeted purchases, we do not need a budget amendment. So if no objection from the library board, we will go ahead and make those 2 purchases. The next page is the reasons for those 2 items. The first one, sprinkler system tests. Cities require us to conduct a pipe inspection once every 5 years and an air leakage inspection once every 3 years. Current year's budget does not cover 6 branch locations in Kansas City, Independence, and retail. The estimated cost to perform the tests for all 6 locations is about $6,500. But if JE Dunn can verify the tests were performed during the renovation, we could cut the cost by half. I believe Jake is in contact with JE Dunn. The second item is because the lightning strike at MGC. We have to replace the breaker. This is unexpected and it was not budgeted for the year. On your board agenda, page 32, it has a list of all the payments over $100,000. Please let me know if you have any questions about it. Also, next month, maybe around mid-July, you will receive confirmation letters as part of upcoming audit. Please review and send it back to the auditors. I believe we will email you and mail the letter to you. That's my report for month.
Thank you, Carl. Before we go to the voting matter, any questions or CFO? Okay.
This is Lori. This is Lori Lemunion. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just had a question with the amount that we are owing in interest that we're paying to the bank. Can you just confirm, I know with interest rates being on the rise, is that a fixed amount that we're paying? Like, are we locked into a fixed rate for so many years, or is that flexible?
I believe you refer to the debt service fund. We have an agreement with a financial institution called Texas. They promised to give us 2.4% interest income.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Would you estimate the total amount of interest that we earned on that as
Okay.
a part of the capital improvement budget?
That's on the statement.
I think it was on the report, but
Yes. Little over $3.7 million.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, we have a housekeeping matter. It's been proposed that certain expenditures that Quan mentioned be approved, so.
Can I?
Sure,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. The way the policy works is we don't require a budget adjustment for it.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, if I could borrow this for a second. We don't actually require a budget adjustment for this because we can handle this within existing funds. So it doesn't actually require a vote. However, if there's objection by the board, then we would want to hear that.
Any objections? Hearing none. Okay, our next matter is our search committee. Report. At our last meeting, the search committee met with Shanna Platt, who is the principal of the search organization that was engaged by the library. And we also had legal counsel for the committee join us by Zoom. And the thrust of our conference with Shanna was to establish a proposed timeline for their services. Initially, she asked us to obtain information from various constituencies within the communities that we serve. And it started off with the members of the committee identifying people to be invited to participate or to be questioned in the process of looking for the traits to be sought in the new CEO. In the criterion of the priorities also for the employees, and I think we had 8 bullet points to be prioritized by the employees. An additional one was added and incorporated and accepted by our consultants. Now, with regard to the input from all employees, in fact, are eligible to offer their opinions with regard to what they would seek to be in the person who will be their ultimate boss. Once the information is compiled from the employees as well as individuals who were identified, a confidential report will be generated. I say confidential because it's confidential between the search firm and the board. It is certainly not confidential as far as I know under the sunshine laws, but that will have to be determined by council. We were advised that certain candidates were already identified, and the search firm had a very interesting history. They would find persons who are fitting the desired qualifications and then reach out to them. And in most instances, the persons themselves were not actually seeking another opportunity, but had the traits that could be sought by the client of this firm. And that process has been started. The posting of the opening has been in various voluntary membership organizations, professional library organizations, and other sources that would be meaningful to at least let the word get out to a broad range of potential candidates. Now, a timeline was set up, and during the course of the conversation, it was I think agreed that this is indeed very, very flexible a timeline, but nonetheless something to which we're going to be aspiring. In July, hopefully we will identify all qualified candidates. In August, the expression used was a group of candidates would be identified. The search firm will then have interviews by Zoom or other technology with those candidates, and then they will refine the listing of the persons. And then in September, there will be a second review of Zoom or similar type of interviews with the persons. Then in late September, the thought was that there would be for each person, and now we've limited down to 2 or 3, each of these people would come to Kansas City for roughly a day and a half have a thorough review of the headquarters, various branches, generally the Kansas City community, because of course that would be that person's new home if they come from the outside. It was also thought at that time that Shanna Plott, who is the principal of the search firm, would also come to Kansas City and participate in this, the tour process of the library and the Kansas City community. It was also mentioned that there was an option to have a third-party deep assessment into whoever's going to be the person under consideration. Discussion within the meeting was that by the time a person goes through this process, there probably isn't very much else that could be discovered, but nonetheless, a deeper assessment by a third-party firm is available. We were told that this process was used in the past by, my recollection is less than half of the clients of the firm, but again, it is available. Yesterday, I had a telephone conversation with Chris Shea, who is a colleague of Shannon on her search team for the library. And he asked us to do a final scrub down of the trades, and that was done. And they do have the final, although it was 99.5% completed already, a final approval of the desired trades for the candidate. We were also told that there has been a collection of the feedback from the employees, and that's being consolidated and grouped according to the priorities that the individual employees had for the desired qualifications for their ultimate boss. This will also be given to us in a written report. Now, with regard to the people who the selection committee recommended be contacted, only half of them have responded. The search firm reached out to them, and half of those had made contact. The other half have basically had no contact whatsoever. There's going to be another attempt, but the thoughts are that there's been sufficient input that if the other half, the designated people don't reply, that it's not in any way going to be hindering or detrimental to the overall process. A meeting was proposed for next week, and the dates have been submitted to the members, and we hopefully will find a time next week, Monday through Wednesday, to meet. And other members of the committee, please supplement anything I should have mentioned or correct anything that you feel should be. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question. So in addition to identifying, in addition to identifying people who would be good candidates who aren't looking, are you also planning to post the position in key trade journals and that sort of thing?
Yes. We revised that the key library organizations, ALA, the Urban Library, all of those will be posting the notice for the library. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, the Finance and Audit Committee report.
You hear me okay? Excuse me. The Finance Committee met on last Friday. It was a short notice scheduled meeting. The process of collecting data has taken some time, and some of the data wasn't available. In fact, some of the data is still pending. I gave an update on the status of requests. We talked about the process. Certain requests are unfilled. One of those remains unfilled at this point. I provided a memo to the committee, which the board subsequently received, explaining some of the findings. I also, as a sole trustee, just put out an alternative, given some of those findings, and we can either discuss those here or again defer those to the budget section of the discussion. Fairly extensive discussion by the committee on process, where we stood, but in the end, there was no vote taken on any budget items.
because some of the things needed to come to the attention of the full board. And I will, again, I can explain this here, I can explain this at the time of the budget section. So that was it for the meeting. I'll for further comments into the budget section.
Okay, thank you. Librarians reports.
Really, there's just a couple of things that I wanted to share tonight. I did distribute a couple of reports to you, written reports on the levy hearing from a couple of weeks ago, as well as staff response to the budget analysis that I sent out. The last one I sent out last night. A copy of both of those reports are in the librarian's report section of board docs. So if you misplaced any one of those, both of those are there. I did, the other quick announcement that I have, the Lee Summit branch did open a week ago Monday to great fanfare. The people have really been desperate to have that library back. And hopefully we'll see you all on June the 30th when we have our dedication ceremony for that. I did ask Susan to provide a brief report on our Lit Up Festival, which is our teen literary and arts festival that we hold. It was a really big event, building a lot of momentum before the pandemic, and then pivoted to virtual and came back physical for the first time a couple weekends ago. So.
In the first in-person lit up event since in 3 years, we had 175 teens and adults attend on Saturday, June 4th at the North Independence branch. They moved it. It was a previous and not pre-pandemic. It was the first weekend in May, but we were finding that was running into difficulties with prom and Mother's Day and some other things. So we moved it to June. The event featured keynote authors Christina Hammond-Reed and Neil Schusterman, as well as other author talks and workshops featuring young adult authors and graphic artists. Some teams traveled from across the state to attend. They did this pre-pandemic, and that is continuing. We had students and teams from Rockport, Joplin, and Pittsburgh, Kansas. A couple of comments from that. The teens were always survey every program. If you've been to our programs, you know that. We had some of the responses included, I really can't choose what I liked most out of today's awesome experiences. The author's reflections on the impact of books and libraries in their life and society is what I enjoy hearing about. Another one said, getting to talk to someone that can directly help me with my career goals was beneficial. And somebody liked the interview format. It was very effective and put the authors at ease.
That's the librarian's report.
Thank you, Steve and Susan. Next matter, new business, is the adoption of the 22-23 budget. Yes, Brent.
I'll just speak loudly. I'd like to move approval of the staff proposed budget. That is in board docs and is the document in front of us, and is the document that's on the table. And I will make that motion to initiate the budget discussion.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we discussion. Please.
I don't feel comfortable without being able to really discuss some of the work that Gordon has put in. So I guess I'm a little confused why we would have this motion before us without considering Gordon has done so much due diligence in looking out for not only the library, but all the taxpayers. So I don't know, that's all I want to say. I'm just a little confused why we wouldn't hear some of the work that has been put in.
This doesn't preclude this. It's just a way just to get budget. on the floor. I would hope and anticipate that Mr. Cook would, engage in the conversations and share the additional information that he presented to us on Friday. This would be an opportunity to review the staff memo that was prepared and we got on Monday, so it doesn't preclude any discussion. It's just a way, the hope or desire here is that we would formally adopt and fulfill our responsibility to adopt a budget tonight, and this is the only formal budget that's in front of us.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Please. I'd just like to make a background comment for those of you who weren't able to attend the levy hearing. I'd like to point out that Gordon's comments will not be the comments of the Finance and Audit Committee. They're his individual opinions, and his research was not asked for by the Finance and Audit Committee. So the normal procedure where the Finance and Audit Committee would spend substantial amounts of time studying the budget and trying to understand it as well as possible and trying to take into account as many ideas from trustees and the public as could be done during that period of time. That has not happened. No meetings were called in May and June, which are the 2 months in which most of the work of the Finance and Audit Committee is consolidated. All the other committees have made recommendations to the board, and those recommendations have essentially already been adopted. So I just want, as we go into this discussion, I just want to make sure that people understand that the committee designated by the board to make recommendations on the budget is not in a position to make the kind of recommendation based on our own study that we would normally do. So our choice as a committee, if we had a choice, which we haven't had so far, would be to support the budget that the staff has presented and that has been thoroughly reviewed by each of the other committees and also thoroughly reviewed by the public, since it's been available to the public, as I understand it, since February or March. Did it go, that draft?
Just May.
May, okay.
is when it became public.
The draft was put online in May and available at all our branches in May. So that's this, what is in the motion is the budget that has been thoroughly reviewed by the public and every other committee other than the Finance and Audit Committee. Thank you. Any other comments on this matter?
Yes. And I guess in response to John's comments, I agree that the process has been different. The process is much different than expected. As I've explained, meetings and previous board meetings, there were requests made all along to obtain information. The requests were repeatedly questioned, challenged, rebuffed. I did a sunshine request on May 6th to obtain information. Subsequently told that it would take 3 weeks to get that information. I wrote a check for $166 and some change in response to the cost of that. We, after receiving part of that, we have board docs. There were some open items with regard to the building fund, one of which was received about 8 o'clock last night, one of which remains open. And it's honestly very critical. We have not received an accounting of the building fund, which now has been running 5 years, to tell us where the money has been spent. I'm assuming that data is out there. Somebody has it. We did get a liability analysis last night. I do have some questions about that because it includes a couple of assumptions that the board hasn't, a couple of amounts the board has yet to approve. But by and large, you know, the decision was made to wait until we get information. Also, as was explained at the May meeting, the budget, as I learned, is largely just some numerical inputs. So having a thorough discussion about what the budget entails normally would require some understanding of what's going to fall underneath the hood and really just understand how the numbers are compiled. That is made difficult because, again, the lack of information, comparable data, the fact that in many cases, comparable data was the budget of prior years, not the actual numbers. So the I guess I'll call the reviews I did, the investigations, were really to try and bring the information for the committee so the committee could have an in-depth discussion. Those things didn't happen on a timely basis, and here we are. A couple things that I think are significant that I want to bring to the board's attention, obviously brought to the committee's attention last Friday, was in the projection of the payroll costs for the 21-22 year. In the budget book, as I'll call it, the projected payroll was $24.2 million. When you look at where year-to-date April was, it means that the May and June payrolls would have each had to be $2.75 million. As May came in, it was actually April's payroll came in at 1.9, May's came in at 1.8, which means that the variance on 1 month's payroll was $962,000. When you include FICA, that's about a little over $1 million variance. That is a material matter. Okay? When you're projecting the last 2 months, I find it highly unusual that you can be off $1 million on a single month's payroll. Given where May's landed, which year to date is to about $20.5 million, the June payroll has to be in the range of 7. And again, we don't know where June's going to land. They don't, unless I guess tens and maybe lots and lots of people were hired. That 3.7 seems again materially unstable. Another thing that was noted that I didn't that came up in the process of looking at the building what I'll call the building liability analysis to see what the fund balance said was with regard to the dashboard that was used by the committee, and this has been, you all have this, it's on board docs. You can see that there are 2 columns of data. One shows the date J.E. Dunn costs as of January 25th, 2018. The total of that column is $84.5 million. The next column shows the date J.E. Dunn current costs. Again, lists everything by work package. And it shows a total of $84.5 million. When I put this into what I was doing is just because in discussion with Brent, it was apparent to me that there may have been some misunderstanding about what the liability analysis should look like. And so I put together an illustration and format, and I put these numbers in, and the total of these numbers came up to, I think it's $91.6 million. 91,293,000 plus. Okay? That's a $6.8 million variance. I have to be honest with you, that's a little surprised. I went back and checked my numbers 5 times, thinking I must have done something wrong. But as it turns out, that's what the numbers total to, is $91.3 million for that $6.8 million variance. I then looked at what's in the budget book, and the numbers that are in the budget book on page, say it's in the 40s, are different than what's presented on the dashboard here. And again, I get the same variance from what was was shown to the JE done current. So that raised a significant flag for me as well, because I'm sitting here asking, what is it why are we trying to tell them when it's 84 point of the board that it's 84.5 when in fact the numbers add up to 1.3 million? That in addition to, we have never seen, as I said, we've not seen the accounting for all the costs, and all the costs include the architects, the furniture, I guess new furniture and equipment, moving costs, storage costs. I don't know what else is in there, but I can see what's in the budget. The presentation of those costs in terms of their components differs between what the dashboard shows and what the budget shows. Again, there's no explanation for the variance or for the different presentations. So it's difficult to have a discussion about where the budget is, because the budget entails look at how the revenues are used. So three different things. One is to fund operations, one is to fund debt, which has to come off the top.
Yeah. Pool's really nice. It has a waterfall, there's a hot tub.
Is to fund the capital costs, and it's the capital costs funded by, I guess I would call it revenues over expenses during the operating year or fiscal year. And I think in only 2 of the years since Prop L has that been taken off the top. The one was in 2018, I think the other one was 2020. So we don't have a reconciliation of how the money is spent. We don't have a reconciliation of where that money, what the sources of those funds were. And the board has not seen it, and the finance committee has not seen it. And we're 5 years into this project, and it's as Steve described, the capital fund is a kind of an ecosystem unto itself. So if you think about it, we have we have the operating account over here on the left side, and we have the capital fund over here on the right side, and those two have to be in sync, and you have to understand what the numbers are and how those two relate to each other. Because if you don't fund your assets, or you don't fund your capital costs, you're not going to have a building that looks like this. This has to be maintained, and you have a revenue structure that is a tax-driven structure. You have an operating cost that is really not. There's no correlation between the two. The revenue is totally unlinked from what the cost structure is. So that's where we stand. My budget proposal was simply to put something on the table, and really for the board here to consider. The fact is, the budget that will be approved tonight, one form or another, can be amended by statute, and we have until June 30th to adopt a budget. I hope we adopt something. I think there's no intention of shutting down the library. I think some of the comments that have been out there were probably under the wrong impression, or under the impression that could happen. It can't happen because the board policies don't allow that to happen. And Ron, you made a comment explain that. So that's the concerns I have about the budget are that I have these significant variances. I have estimation variances that go into 2 months of payroll, and it raised a question in my mind about where else is this occurring, especially since the budget is largely input numbers into a worksheet. And if a number can be overridden in a dashboard, it can easily be overridden in a budget document to produce a different result. So that's where things are. I think this is a significant issue. I think the board needs to understand that these are significant variances and they should not be ignored. And where we stand on the budget, that's peaceful. So
Please.
Well, Gordon, I really feel like we owe you an apology because I feel like you've done nothing but try to do some due diligence. And I don't think maybe in years past this has been done. So I just think there's been a lot of misinformation to the public and to you. And so I just, about you, and really just apologize that just you trying to do your job, trying to get this information, because how can we have a discussion in Finance Committee if we don't even have the numbers? So I do understand what you're saying, and I just apologize because maybe I can ask you a question. I mean, is it your intent to cut all these programs so we'll have a poor library system? Is that your intent?
No.
Well, I didn't think so.
That's a falsehood. Really, all I want, and all I've ever asked for, are real numbers. And I think when we get real numbers, we can whatever gets approved tonight, we have to go back and look at what the right numbers are. We have to go back and look at what we allocate for the capital reserve and make sure that we are preserving these assets. The fiscal assets of this library are significant, and they need to be maintained. And you can't do that on the back end. Hope that you have monies left over after the operations are completed in the fiscal year. That has to be done on a planned and diligent basis. Right? No different than you manage your household income and you take care of your home and manage your individual budgets. So in terms of me wanting to cut programs, that was never the case. I just want real numbers so we know where the money's being directed, where it needs to go, and we'll get it done.
Any other questions, comments? Susan.
I want to say respectfully, Gordon, I do appreciate the due diligence and looking into the details. But with all due respect, my knowledge and understanding of the role of board members or trustees is to advise and to navigate certain board business, not to get into the details of operations. And if I were a staff member on the budget side right now, I'd be feeling really bad because it sounds like what we're saying is that they've done shoddy work, their numbers come out of the sky. And in hearing from some of the budget staff, I heard that that wasn't the case. I heard that the library is in a situation that they have a lot going on, buildings, staff, new staffing. And if you've ever been an administrator of a large operation, you know that you can only predict what costs are. You don't know what they're going to be with pinpoint accuracy, but you put enough in the budget and money in the budget to be able to cover what you think it might be. And so, respectfully, I have to say that board policy doesn't support the idea of one trustee basically digging into budgets and casting aspersions on the hardworking budget staff. So I will just leave that there.
Here.
Any other comments, questions? I would just like to mention that there seems to be, understandably, a concern about the day today being this month's board meeting. And I'd like to go over, and I realize it's going to be terribly tedious and boring, but I endeavor to get it done within 60 to 90 seconds. But Section 182.645.1 of our Missouri statutes says that the fiscal year of a consolidated library district is July through the following June 30th. And each librarian has to submit to the board of trustees of their respective libraries a budget for the next coming year. Now, then the board receives the proposed budget, then the board is to approve the budget after making changes that are deemed necessary by the board. Then the statute continues that the budget shall be approved on or before June 30th, so next week. And the budget, again, this is statute, the law. The budget from time to time may be amended or modified. And what can be amended or modified is the approved budget. So the budget will be approved, and that doesn't cast it in stone. The budget may be amended. And typically we see this all the time. Like, for example, I hope this is an inappropriate analogy, but in a county, for example, there may be a budgeted allocation for roads. And we find out that, well, the amount is inadequate by virtue of some natural disaster. So there'll be line item adjustments. So the budgets can be modified. But that's the Missouri law. Now our policies, section 512, talks about the annual budget, and it pretty much parallels the statute. It says on the third Tuesday of May, the library director and CEO submits to the board a proposed budget for the fiscal year commencing the following July 1st, next week. That proposed budget was prepared. In fact, there are budgets there that are available for our review. And actually, they've been available for some time. On the third Tuesday of June, the board adopts the final budget. Well, that's midnight today. And then it says, and I want to stress the point because there's been some understanding from some local media that if we don't approve a budget, that the library is going to close. So in other words, the triggering event for this calamitous event of closing the libraries is not approving a budget. Well, we really don't have to worry about that because the fail-safe in the policy says if the board fails to adopt the budget on or before that date, today at midnight, the budget as submitted or amended goes into effect. So if we were to adjourn the meeting right now and not reconvene until tomorrow, we have not adopted a budget. But the policies say that if you didn't adopt a budget, no big deal. What was put on the table last month, in fact, now is the budget. So the whole idea of not adopting a budget by the board is going to cause this, again, a dreadful notion of closing down the library just isn't going to happen. Because, again, the triggering safety valve is the fact that if you don't do anything, we're going to take what was submitted last month. And I thought whoever put that in policy, I think did it quite wisely. So again, this doesn't deal directly with the quality and the authenticity of the numbers we were talking about, but it's somewhat related to that. The fact that I've been picking up a lot of correspondence, which I appreciate very much on the budgetary process and then this notion of closing. And I could actually pick up in the emails that there's a great deal of concern and maybe fear is too hard of a word, but a great deal of concern that the libraries are going to be closing. They're not. And also just the process too. In January of every year, this library gets tens of millions of dollars coming in. And Kwanzaa, brother CPA, he's a great CFO, according to CPA too. The money comes in January, half of it's spent from January through June. The libraries aren't going to close. We got the other half of tens of millions of dollars in the bank to go through the rest of the year. Then the year's over, guess what? Again, in January, more tens of millions of dollars come in. So we are not going to close the doors because we don't have a budget, because we have the fail-safe. We're not going to close the doors because we don't have money. The money's coming in. Plus, we have a half year's fund balance in the bank. So that has nothing to do other than the fact of addressing that hopefully nobody feels or continues to have some ill feelings about us closing down. Just ain't going to happen. And I should be quiet now. Who's next? Please.
Thank you, Ron. I think that you are correct that the budget that has been presented would be adopted if we fail to do our duty. I would implore this board to do our duty and to approve a budget so that staff and the public can know that the library has the funds that are approved and are formally approved to be allocated and dispersed to continue our library mission.
Thanks, Russell. Anybody else?
I just have a couple of
Please.
policy type questions. So, I realized that, Gordon was working, I believe, diligently, and that there's some difference of opinion, and I respect that. But, because we weren't able to work together as a finance committee to go over some of these things, my question is that, once Gordon has received the information that he believes he needs, so we can have an informed discussion about the budget, are we able to amend if whatever budget we adopt tonight? Can we meet together as a finance committee, hash over things and make amendments? Is that allowable?
Yes. Well, if finance committee doesn't make amendments,
No, I know, I didn't mean it. I probably said that wrong. Not that but the finance committee could at least look at the information, because obviously we can't do that in much capacity tonight, but we can look at some information that Gordon has been compiling and maybe make some suggestions. I just want to know if that was allowable.
yes. And it also would give time for the very excellent responses that the staff has prepared at the behest of this board and is before you tonight to enter the picture. And so what it does is to make corrections in the principal findings that Gordon has announced so far. So I think, yes, that could all be considered along with Gordon's research during full meetings of a fully staffed finance committee during our next year. And each meeting, we could take that issue up and discuss it and take it up and be prepared to make any recommendations that might be needed for the board.
If I could, just as a matter of procedure, the finance committee can take up matters and suggest the way of amendments to the budget. Anytime any individual member can suggest amendments. You just have to remember the requirements of the Sunshine Act so that it can be put onto the agenda and appropriately before your next meeting or the meeting you want to discuss.
Any member of the board.
Any member of the board. Well, but for that matter too, if the budget committee has an amendment they want to make, it ought to be on the agenda as an action item.
Please.
I appreciate the work that the budget committee has done to prepare for this. And I don't think that there's according to what Ron just said, an absolute rush to vote this budget in. I would really like to vote on an honest budget with real numbers. And so if by midnight tonight, if we don't vote on this, we still have a budget. And then we can get the real numbers to vote on.
Other comments?
I would like to hear from staff. I think there's been a lot of conjecture and a lot of statements made that I believe are incomplete. One of them being that you did not get information. From board docs, I see that there has been 71 compilations of information since you've been appointed to this board just a few months ago, sent to you from your request. The I have not, as a member of the finance committee, I have no idea what specific information you're looking for. I've asked for that and I've got no feedback. So you have not utilized the expertise of other board members as is usually the policy. At this point, I would like to hear from staff because I do not believe the numbers in the budget are not real numbers. So I would like to hear from staff.
I defer to council on having staff come involved. What's your call?
It's part of the discussion. If the staff has input to it, fine. But it needs to be germane. You have a motion on the floor and discussion needs to be germane to the discussion and, or to the motion. So it's really kind of borderline when you start talking about the validity or invalidity and the procedure that got us here today. But if there's a short response.
Well, I would like to know.
Can't we just vote?
Why, I would like to know from staff, the numbers.
What? Okay.
Then one at a time.
The idea that we cannot vote on this because the numbers are not real, I believe is germane. And I would like, and I believe they're real. I've read the budget, I've looked at the budget, I've looked at the information that's been provided by Mr. Cook, and I've looked at the information that's been provided by staff. And I am prepared to vote on this budget tonight.
Just a couple of things, if I can. I think my statements were that the numbers were inputs. That's different than saying that they're made up. Okay? That was an observation I made. I repeated that observation. I saw no supporting calculations. It wasn't until I pressed or requested additional personnel detail and the individual salaries were provided. It was my understanding that the personnel committee approved the salaries budget based on a single schedule and without the benefit of seeing individual salaries. That would be pretty common, I guess, in my view of things would operate. So there's no assertion that the numbers aren't real. The concern, as I expressed, was based on two findings. Okay, one was that I have a dashboard where the numbers don't put to the total, and it would appear that the total number is an input. I wish if I get the schedule, I can see it. Okay. The second one is the second major finding I noted was that the salaries projection for the 21-22 year was materially overstated. Okay. That too raised a question about the process of pulling numbers together. So that's the reason I raised the concerns. The reason for the myriad of requests is because that's the process I had to go to get information. And it took over 2 months to get some. The one, as noted, was received about 85 minutes. So, Mr. President, I would suggest we call the question.
Here we have it's been moved and seconded that there is approval of the budget as proposed by staff. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Abstain?
Aye.
Okay, let's call the vote. No. I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
She wants a roll call.
Yes, a roll call, please, yeah.
Ron,
No.
Joyce West? Yes. Gordon,
No.
John,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Lori, Yemi, Brent,
Yes.
Noel,
No.
Rita? No. Susan,
Yes.
Michelle,
No.
Lori,
Lori, you're unmuted. We should be able to hear you. Can you hear us? Lori just chatted me, yes. Is that your response? Is that your vote, Lori? Yes, she approves.
okay, so there was a tie in the vote, so that's a fail.
Council tie.
The motion failed.
6-6. So, okay.
The count was a 6-6, which is a tie, so that failed. That's a failed motion. 6 yeas and 6 noes.
So the proposed budget has not passed. I'm sorry.
So the proposed budget has not passed. Is there an alternative, or do we not have anything and then have by de facto have the proposed budget become the budget?
You either have no budget and according to your
According to our policies,
the
budget
proposed budget will be adopted.
Yes. as
Or
a-
you have to schedule a special meeting of the board before the 30th to take up a resolution of a new budget.
I believe our policies state that at midnight, if the board doesn't approve a budget, the proposed budget made last May does become the approved budget, but but that can be modified. Okay.
I have a question.
Thomas?
So a second vote cannot be taken tonight on an alternative? If we didn't pass the budget.
The,
We don't have an alternative.
no, there's no alternative on the floor. Now, if you have an alternative you want to submit, I suppose that's possible. But there again, it will not have been shared with the public and it will not have been shared with other members of the board and becomes problematic.
Calling you for legal advice before full retirement. So an option then is to have, of course, in a proposed agenda, have the due notices and publication and agenda, everything, and then call a special meeting before the end of the month.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is a possibility. Or you can just let the proposed budget take effect and then modify it as time goes on.
Mr. President,
Please.
just a couple of comments. I want to express my disappointment. I don't believe that we fulfilled our responsibilities as a board. This was something that's not a surprise. I know on April 15th, I'm supposed to file my taxes and try to do that ahead of time, and then we could have done this in a timely fashion. I'm going to suggest if an alternative budget is developed, is that there's a second public hearing that's held, because in some senses, the public hasn't had a chance to see and review and comment on that. There's been an extraordinary robust participation on the part of the public, perhaps not on the part of particular committees of the board, because there were 89 comments that were emailed to the staff. There were 18 comments that were made at the public hearing on the levy. There were 4 comments that were made at the finance committee meeting, and we heard from some members of the public tonight. So we can engage in a rolling budget process if that's what's needed, but I would suggest is that we might be well advised to hit pause and allow the fail-safe budget to go into place, because I'm not so sure that questions that are outstanding can be answered in a timely fashion, such to the satisfaction of the people who are asking the question, such to the degree that we can reassemble as a board for something which I hope that we would have done tonight. And so I would just encourage is that people submit their questions and pull them together. I will make my own representation here, but a significant part of the budget represents the building and capital. And we meet regularly and we talk regularly. And every time that we look and we talk about a question that perennially comes up and says, are there sufficient funds in the capital budget to complete these projects? And we have been satisfied, not on one occasion, not on two occasions, not on three occasions, but 4 or 5, 6, because we believe we want to understand is that do we have funds to complete the project? So let me name the projects so people know. There's the project that's at Green Valley. It's under design, and staff can correct me, it may be out for bid. Not out for bid yet, but when it comes back, we will see what the impact of construction costs will have on that project. We recently acquired a property for East Independence Branch, something that we was part of Proposition L and a commitment we made to voters, and that's out there. We've had lengthy discussions over a course of many, many, many years about a Riverside project and what it is that that might look like. And so we've not been oblivious of the rise in construction costs. We've not been oblivious to what it is that might happen. We've been very mindful of what it is that the funds that might be available. Frankly, I'm satisfied on the page 3 of the memo that the staff prepared that lays it all out there. I'm not looking at the entire program, because in some senses those costs are sunk and that they're over and that they're guaranteed, and we book those costs. I have a different perspective, which is, do we have sufficient funds available within the capital budget and or other funds that we might make available to complete these 3 projects? So I just want to say that in passing this is that this has been an extraordinary building program that has gone very, very well, and we've done very, very well by it all. We took the wise advice of our finance chairs as understand that at some point all these buildings will come up and they will need maintenance at a later point, and the building committee went through a thoughtful process about outlining a building maintenance fund. So I don't want to suggest is that we're indifferent toward the remaining costs that might be out there, or indifferent of what the cost of maintaining what are a public asset. So thank you.
Other comments, questions? I thought it's exactly what you had mentioned, that the proposed budget, in fact, at midnight will be the budget what we work with. And then we have through the end of the month to make modifications to that. And that would be the case no matter what would be adopted as the budget or how it was adopted. And just only 8.5% of the votes myself, I think it's entirely proper to have public comment to what it was last time.
If I can be clear.
Please.
You don't have to the end of the month to make amendments to the budget. That's an ongoing project throughout the course of the next fiscal year.
Yeah, true. Thank you. More comments, questions on this matter?
I heard one thing, and I just want to make sure I heard it clearly. My statement was, I don't believe that we can engage in development of alternative budget in the 9 remaining days of the month. If there is a desire to revisit the budget and do additional engagement on the part of board members and the finance committee, that's something that would be happening after July 1st, and that we would go into the next fiscal year with a fail-safe budget in place. And I'm looking for some affirmation of that, because I'm not so sure that we would effectively be able to do what people are wanting us to do in the 9 days that are available.
Well, I mean, you're talking having another meeting between now and the 30th to consider a budget would be a possibility. You're talking about an awful lot of work that has to be done by an awful lot of people to get that done. For the public to be informed and have input to it, like they did tonight. And not really 9 days. You have to give 2 days notice. So you're really talking about in the course of about a week to get that done.
If it's okay, I would make a suggestion. Just piggybacking. If the budget fail-safe procedure kicks in, I suggest that we take the next several weeks to review the budget, get the full accounting on the capital plan, get a full understanding where the money has gone, make sure we have these two different, as I call it, two different entities fully accounted for and fully disclosed to the board. The budget backup and the inputs can be reviewed during that time period. The timing of the second piece of the process is the levy certification, which doesn't occur until early September. It's something Juan does in late August. It has to be sent to the state auditor. The state auditor certifies that. It is then returned to the county commissioners or the county, whoever the appropriate body of the county is. That is then, as I understand, submitted to the board in September and approved by the board. So I would suggest we kind of go down that path and use the next 2 months to refine this and to fine tune it and present those amendments and changes at the September board meeting.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just feel like there's sort of some unnecessary tension in the room, and I think it's lightening up because I really believe that all of us, I mean, we may differ on something, but I believe that every board member wants the best thing for the library. And I think that, oh wait. And I think that, again, that I don't know why this misunderstanding with Gordon trying to do some due diligence. I think that's so appreciated. Every taxpayer should be thanking you, Gordon, for doing that. But nevertheless, I just, I think really we all want the same thing, and that is to have an excellent library and no one wants to cut programs. Nobody wants to do, to do anything like that. So I just look forward to, I think in the next coming months, I think we will have something maybe if anything needs to be amended, so be it. If not, so be it.
Anyone else?
I appreciate the comments. I love this library system deeply, and it's, should be evident and how it is that I feel about it all. I would ask one consideration is that it's summer and some timely notice about scheduled meetings so that we can participate. Somebody told me once the value of the meeting is the preparation for the meeting. We learned a lot actually in Gordon's analysis on Friday. I learned a lot and raised a lot of questions in the staff's analysis of that I got on Monday. But, have regularly scheduled meetings, because if there's a strong belief is that there's significant and it's amount of work that needs to be done, then in some senses, then let's be about getting the work done and let's do it collectively. I do want to reiterate the point that's in, and I've got this if people want to see it, the governance style on page 16, because I believe this is what's transpired here. Unfortunately or regrettably, but I think it's a fair description of it all. The board will not use the expertise of an individual board members to substitute for the judgment of the board as a whole. All of the expertise of individual members may be used to enhance the understanding of the board members of a group. Development budgets, development of policy is a group activity. It's not an individual sport.
And that, I don't think that happened. I don't think Gordon set any policy.
Keep your comments to yourself, really.
I'd ask the audience to allow the board to engage in this discussion and on the back side of it all. I just have to respectfully differ because we had regularly scheduled meetings that weren't held. And so even to the degree that we got together and say, we're stalling out and we're not making the progress that we need to make. I've attended every meeting that's been called. I've tried to participate in every meeting that's called. I've tried to do my homework, prior to coming to the meeting, but you do have to meet together to be able to understand where it is that you are, and just as equally where it is that you aren't, because it's only in the conversation and only in the interaction to understand, well, what are the outstanding issues and what's the path that emerges. And so I just encourage us to have a set of regular scheduled meetings if there is an alternative budget that is to be developed and presented, first of all, to the board, secondly, to the public, and then back to the board for public consideration for board approval.
Further discussion.
Okay, that being the case, announcements.
I think that there is a full list of announcements and calendar that you will have. Probably the big ones that we have, just to make sure that you are aware. Obviously, July 4th, Independence Day, library day close. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I should be using the microphone. Thank you. Yeah, usually I project much better.
Yeah, I can't project anymore right now. Announcements, you've got the calendar in front of you. The big one, Independence Day, the libraries are all closed, so please be aware of that. There is the grand opening celebration for Lee Summit, as I mentioned, on the 30th, and hope to see most of you there. And Legacy Luncheon, July the 22nd. If you don't have tickets, don't know what's going on, please talk with Diana. She may have left, but she can definitely get you filled in on that. And then, of course, the next board meeting, which will I will be here. Susan will be here helping you through the next board meeting, which will be in July.
Thank you, Steve. Next matters trustee comments. I'd like to lead off by expressing, which I know is the sentiments and feelings of everybody, is that we wish Steve the very, very best and a great deal of affection and appreciation for him, and especially since he's just getting over this COVID, to wish him all good things, and in particular in this lovely family, all good health. Get better.
I move we adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.